Hey everyone, here are 11 brand new games that you can pick up for your Nintendo Switch this week. Now, a few released today, and we do have some highly anticipated games, so let's find out if any are worth your time or your money. Stay safe and please enjoy the video. Alright, we'll start with Minecraft Legends. Now, of course, there's no question that Minecraft is one of the most popular and influential games of all time. The success has led to a couple of spin-off series now, the latest of which is Minecraft Legends, releasing today, and you can pick up either the base game or the deluxe edition for $10 more. Of course, this will give you a few additional goodies that you can use to customize your character or get around the map, but at the core of the game it's about exploring these large environments, gathering resources, and then using them to call upon allies to help defend your home base. It does have both online and local multiplayer, so that's always nice, and again it releases today, April 18th for $39.99 or $49.99 for the deluxe edition, and you'll need about 6.5 gigs for the download. Up next we have Disney Speedstorm, which hits the Nintendo Switch today and brings some of the most popular characters from the Disney universe into the kart racing scene. It promises both classic and modern Disney-inspired levels, dating all the way back to the black and white animation days, and while much of this is meant to invoke that feeling of nostalgia, the core gameplay on the Switch just doesn't keep up with other popular franchises already in the genre. There are a ton of unlockables, but the different systems become a bit too much for the casual gamer, meaning you'll have to devote a ton of time to learning the game and grinding for the best upgrades, and some younger gamers might be a bit overwhelmed by it all. And on top of that, the multiplayer is just a total mess right now. If you are, however, interested in this one, I would suggest waiting for a sale, but it does release today and you can pick up the base edition for $29.99 with options for deluxe and ultimate editions, adding in some extras for an additional price of course, and the download is just under 4 gigs. Next we have the Mageseeker, a League of Legends story, which is a single-player top-down action RPG, and of course it's part of the League of Legends universe, which at this point has branched out and created a whole new fanbase, many of which haven't probably even played the original game. Now in this one we play as a man convicted of murder at a young age, and we find ourselves locked into a pair of magical chains that have the ability to store spell power as you take out your enemies. In addition, as you play through, you'll find characters that you can save, and once you've done so, they can be used to help upgrade your character at the main hub. Now the core gameplay is a ton of fun, and like with most games in the franchise, it really does have a compelling story, which you'll want to see through to the end. If you're interested in the Mageseeker, it releases today with the base edition costing $29.99, or you can go with the deluxe edition for $39.99, and you'll need about 3 gigs for the download. God of Rock is a unique rhythm-based fighter from Modus Games, offering both local and online competitive multiplayer options with a download around 2 gigs. It's basically a mashup of the fighting genre mixed with a Guitar Hero style of gameplay that sees players following along with the rhythm and button prompts, all while trying to do damage and fighting their opponent. Now the soundtrack includes over 40 hard rock tracks, and the game does give a tutorial to help get acclimated to the speed and focus that will be required to pull off that sweet victory. The roster itself includes 12 playable characters, each with their own special moves and different abilities that you can pull off, and while I enjoy the gameplay, it is definitely complicated to keep your focus from splitting between the 2 different aspects. Now with all that said, if you're interested in God of Rock, it released today, April 18th for $29.99, just be prepared to devote some time to mastering the game. The Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Collection brings the first 6 games in the franchise to modern gamers with an updated presentation and modern gameplay conveniences, and they even remastered the soundtracks, which gives the games much more of an epic feeling during most of the important parts or during different battles. And this is something you can change in or out whenever you like. Now the games also had some of the major complaints addressed, such as the combat glitches in the original, and some of the grinding has been minimized to help the games move along a bit quicker. Overall, there are a few changes made to each game, most of which were welcome changes indeed, but the biggest issue for me is the price. The full collection will go for $75, or you can pick up the games individually for either $12 or $18 depending on which game you go with. Now, while I say that, I do realize that you're getting hundreds of hours of gameplay here, but for me it's just a bit too high of a price considering much of the additional content that was added in over the years is still missing with this release. However, if you are interested in the collection, it releases again on the 18th today for $74.99, and you'll need about 5.7 gigs for the download. Up next we have Lost Epic, which is a 2D action RPG that sees players seeking out and taking down different bosses that threaten to destroy the world. And that sounds great, right? But the main story has us seeking out these 6 gods through some of the most grindy gameplay I've seen in quite a while. You'll basically just be grinding on enemies and cooking over and over in order to gain the experience that you need to make it through the rest of the game. And the gameplay itself suffers from a real lack of variety both in the abilities and the enemy types, with many of them being rehashed or recolored later in the game with no change to how they acted in earlier stages. The addition of local co-op is nice, but it's limited, and so for most of the game you'll just be grinding and eventually facing off with a boss, but again, the combat leaves a lot to be desired as well. Overall, I feel like the game was just a bit shallow in almost everything it tried to do, aside from the grinding of course. It does release tomorrow, April 19th for $17.99, or you can get the premium edition for $22, but I would highly recommend skipping this one or at least waiting for a deep sale. Up next we have Labyrinth of Zangetsu, which is a single-player first-person dungeon crawler with a download around 500 megabytes, and it offers a unique experience featuring a beautiful art style inspired by Japanese calligraphy, and it gives the player the choice between 6 playable characters at the start of every game, or you can even customize your own hero as well. Now the enemies were also inspired by Japanese folklore or other even more gruesome tales, and the combat is turn-based, giving you time to strategize each move, and this will become important as some of the battles can be a bit tough until you've learned the best playstyle for each hero. One of the most impressive aspects of the game for me was the soundtrack. The music really does a great job of pulling you into the action for each battle, and I absolutely love it. Labyrinth of Zangetsu releases on the 20th for $29.99. Be sure to check it out. DNF Duel Who's Next is the port of a widely known fighter here to the Switch, and it brings a roster of 16 unique characters with it and a very intense 2.5D style of gameplay, complete with all game modes, and it does offer both local and online multiplayer options as well. Now if you do decide to play online, you can join up to 9 people total, with local being limited to just 2. The game also features a story mode with unique origin stories for each playable character, sort of like you'd see in a Mortal Kombat or Twisted Metal games from the past, and each character has their own special attacks that you can unleash after filling up a special gauge on screen. If you've been waiting for DNF Duel Who's Next, it comes to the Switch on April 20th with a hefty price of $49.99, and the install is about 6.5 gigs, so just make sure you're ready for that. The Last Dragon Slayer is a top-down action-adventure title that offers local co-op for up to 4 players at one time. It has a download around 3.8 gigs and plays a lot like older Zelda titles or even something like Rogue Heroes. The combat is simple and has players dungeon crawling for loot or other treasures while solving environmental puzzles and clearing the path of any enemies that you might encounter. Now the soundtrack gives the game that epic feeling when you're in the overworld, and overall the only thing I can really complain about here is the lack of online play. That's a huge missed opportunity in my opinion. Other than that though, I enjoyed the gameplay thus far, and if you're interested, it releases on April 20th for $14.99. If however you are on the fence, I'm sure it'll be on sale before too long. Park Story is a single-player top-down puzzle-style adventure title, and it offers quite a bit of content with roughly 15 different areas to explore, and some of these areas can be pretty expansive with dungeons or other sub-areas to explore. Now in this one we follow a young man after he crashes and finds himself lost in the woods. The game does have light combat segments, but for the most part you'll just be solving puzzles, and this is the biggest issue I had with the game. It just doesn't do a great job of explaining how things work, so at the start don't be surprised if it takes you a bit just to get the mechanics down or even figure out what you're supposed to do. Now the soundtrack does a great job of immersing you into the game, but it's let down somewhat by a forgettable story, and overall the game is just pretty simple in general outside of the few boss battles that shake things up a little bit. If you're interested in Park Story, it releases on the 20th for $18.49, and the download is just over 1 gig. Again, I would recommend waiting on a sale though. Finally, we have Wild Dogs, which is a single-player retro-inspired action platformer offering 5 different stages, complete with multiple different sections, where the gameplay can switch from a 2D run-and-gun action game to a top-down shmup out of nowhere, and everything is done in that old-school retro aesthetic. Now again, the boss battles were a particular highlight for us as they can be quite challenging in comparison to most of the rest of the game, and if you don't like the standard look, it does offer a few different color palettes to make things a little easier on the eyes. In this one we play as 2 specially trained soldiers, and we have to stop an alien invasion by any means necessary. Wild Dogs releases on April 20th for just $9.99, and the download is around 400 megabytes, so no worries there. Alright everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to support the channel, please drop a like down below, and if you're new here, I hope we earned a click on that subscribe button. I know it's a bit of a taboo word these days with tons of subscriptions for everything, but at least here it's free, and if you made it this far anyway, why not join the crew? Either way though, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, my friends.